gives me great pleasure to introduce her. Her name is Deb Kilpatrick. Deb is a co-CEO and executive chair of Eviction Health. She began her medtech career at Guidant, which is one of those companies that's been around for forever, from what I understand, in multiple leadership roles, and that included research fellow, director of R&D, director of new ventures, and its vascular intervention division prior to its acquisition by Boston Scientific. Deb is currently on the board of directors of Sleep Number, as well as the Task Force for Global Health, which is a global NGO working to improve health and delivery infrastructure in the world's most vulnerable populations. She was the first woman to chair the advisory board for Georgia Tech's College of Engineering and is an innovation team coach for the Biodesign Fellows Program at Stanford. In 2021, Deb was named to the Digital Health Hall of Fame by the University of California, San Francisco. She is a co-founder of MedTech Women and the MedTech Vision Conference, holding a BS, MS, and Ph.D. degrees in engineering with a minor in applied math and stats from Georgia Tech. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you, Ingrid. When Ingrid asked me to talk about mentoring, I thought, oh my goodness, that's very broad. And I will promise to not make it boring or sound like a LinkedIn learning ad. But I thought that I would give a few minutes, take a few minutes to tell you about how mentoring has intersected with my life, and I'll pull it all the way through, i.e. through line, hashtag podcast NPR, go all the way to currently at Eviction, and how a lot of things I've learned on both sides of mentoring have really affected how we operate at the company. So first, how I came to mentoring, and it really is summed up so well by this cartoon. I had no idea what it was, why I should have one, or that I was somehow missing out if I didn't have one. And this is despite the fact that my father, my hero, he passed away of Alzheimer's during the pandemic. He was a high school football coach. He always talked about his mentor, who is in this picture to his left on the right-hand side of our screen, and the impact that relationship had on him. Like, my dad in this picture is, I think he's 28 years old. It's 1969. They're about to win that season the state championship of Georgia in football, which is, of course, like, big deal. Friday Night Lights was really my life. I am in the stands. I am 2 years old. I am in the stands with my mom in this picture, so you can't see me, of course. But my dad's mentor is a man named Joe Compton, and he's in this picture to our right. And I not only knew how much this man affected my father, because he talked about it throughout his whole life of coaching to me. I knew him personally because we would visit with their family. I would be around him, and he always seemed like this amazing, almost soothsayer-ish, like a sensei of football to my dad. But I didn't really click that this was some relationship I could also have. Like, it didn't seem like a mentor was something that I would have. And I think maybe the reason why is because I always knew I wanted to be an engineer. I have no idea how. I don't know why. I've talked about this a lot when people ask me, I have no idea, but it was like this divinely inspired thing in my head from the time that I was in sort of junior high school that I wanted to be. And I think that I didn't understand the value of mentoring because I didn't know anybody who looked like me who was an engineer. I literally knew no one. And this is proof of that. I pulled these stats from a New York Times article that was written like back in the 80s, talking about the boom of engineering and women holding engineering degrees in the US. This is not women in college in engineering school. These were women holding bachelor's degrees in engineering in the United States. When I was in the second grade, there were less than 1,000. By the time that I was graduating from high school and starting college, there were about 10,000. And the article was about this explosion. And so somehow I got in my head that I was going to be an engineer. But I never occurred to me, the thought of mentoring, the concept of mentoring, the thought of having a mentor was so foreign to me because, again, I didn't know anybody who was like me that was an engineer. So off I go after my undergrad to Pratt & Whitney. This is the late 1980s. It's the tail end of the Cold War, and I am on the F-22 Raptor program. That is, side note, the plane that shot down the Chinese spy balloon. But it is actually a pretty badass plane, despite that whole comic situation that is evolving on the internet. And my job was in the computational mechanics group. I've always been a computational person. I was a math minor in grad school, as you heard. And in those days, what that meant was working on a local area network and submitting fixed field Fortran modeling for coupled fluid solid modeling to a Cray supercomputer. There were 5 Cray supercomputers in the world. We were working on one of them. So from a technical perspective, this was incredible. Like I was doing things that I could not have imagined, being able to do as a 23-year-old. So from a technical perspective, I got a lot of mentoring. I learned how to do a lot of things in a 2-year stint before I went back to grad school, but no mentoring whatsoever of me as an employee, as an engineer, as a contributor. My group was sort of the skunk works of computational modeling at Pratt & Whitney in those days. And there were about 100 engineers. There were 2 women, myself and one other woman who I never saw. So, again, I'm in this situation where I loved what I was doing, but I didn't see anybody like me. So I really didn't understand the value of mentoring at all. I go to grad school, I get my Ph.D. in mechanical engineering and bioengineering. My focus is in vascular disease, and boom, I end up at Guidant in the mid to late 90s. And I was there all the way through to its acquisition. I was working in primarily R&D early on, but then I was helping run the new ventures team. And there was a formal mentoring program. Not only was there a formal mentoring program, as many of you know, we had leaders like Maria Saints and Bev Huss who were running the Guidant divisions. And so it was a completely different experience. The other reason that this mentoring program was really important for me is somebody walked into my office in about 2003, 2004. At the time, she was named Amy Belt. You will know her as Amy Raimundo. Amy walked into my office as a fresh off the boat from being brought in as one of our new MBAs at Guidant, and she asked me if I would mentor her. Amy and I went on to found MedTech Women and MedTech Vision conference, and so our mentoring program at Guidant was not only formative for me as an engineer, as a person learning how to play all over the field, which I'll talk about in a second, besides just engineering and besides just R&D, it actually introduced me to Amy, which has of course become a huge part of my life. There's some things I learned along the way, having absolutely no mentorship at all, and then having incredible assets of mentors at Guidant Corporation and the Guidant Network. One about personal growth, like I really learned that it's important to leverage your core expertise in more places on the field, right? I tend to use a lot of football analogies, no guess, or no question where that comes from. I really believe in playing all over the field. It makes you better. Even though it's hard, it's risky because needless to say, I wasn't trained in sales and marketing, even though I did go on to run sales and marketing in different companies. Recognize what you do and what you don't. Be able to raise your hand in either case is really important. And I've had to learn how to do that over time and sort of find my voice, both in terms of asking questions, but also offering ideas. Mentoring, I now realize what my dad was talking about, why it was so important to him that as a young football coach, he had a mentor. It matters because it affects how other people think about their potential. It affects how you think about your potential. So when you get that call to somebody who wants to talk to you about something or get mentored by you, say yes, just take the meeting. You can really affect the way people think about themselves. Have a specific ask or an objective ready when you walk into that meeting if you're being mentored. It's not just a meeting, right? There should be an objective to it, and you should have questions and things you want to learn if you want to get the most out of it. And then finally, watch and learn from your peers. They are often your most valuable teachers. This is something that has really affected the things that I do, the companies that I go to, and the people that I want to be around. And to prove that I practice what I preach on that, I did an exercise about a decade ago, and I asked my inner circle in Silicon Valley for their best advice in 5 words or less. P.S. Almost all of them struggled to limit themselves to 5 words. In fact, it took some people days. This is astonishing to me. They could not do it. But nonetheless, I did hear back from all of them because it was quite a challenge. And I've kept this list in my back pocket, so to speak, ever since over the last 10 years. These are not matched. In other words, I'm not matching up the right-hand side and the left-hand side, but I want you to get a sense of kind of who I asked and what they said. Now, since this is recorded and you'll get to keep this, but I'll tell you the things that I needed to hear the most in that exercise are 2 things here. 1, assume noble intent, and 2, understand the opposite view. They were so seminal to how I think about leadership. You can see them in the company values at Evidation. Challenge each other and state your good intent has been something that we've had on the board at Evidation as one of our core values since the beginning. And so that's the through line, Ingrid, of how my dad had a mentor. I didn't understand why, and how I figured it out and had different experiences and really internalized what I've learned from mentors over the years so much that you can actually see it embodied in the way that we run the company. So thanks for the chance to tell that little story.